not pricing it.
Sorry.
Sorry. Okay. This strategy or thought process is trying to open up everybody's thought process to think outside of just what that one property is giving, like in rental income, or what it can be developed into if it's underdeveloped or raw land, and thinking about what people might need. So, there's a bundle of rights with the property. Certainly, that's physical to the property, but there's tax aspects besides financing and debt. There's development rights or other things that can be generated. And then people might have issues too, where they need money for their business or to clear an estate or something. So I think this unpricing is trying to get a dialogue going between the parties, either the seller and the buyer or the other parties involved, might be an executor or an attorney or something. So I think this is trying to broaden that. We kind of got sidetracked with the overblown market the last few years, that not pricing was just based on getting the maximum price, not so much on thinking about exchanging of benefits. So the whole thought process behind exchanging, I think, is kind of creating a counselor advisor relationship with our clients or potential clients. And of course, that takes a lot more time and more empathy to understand where the client is, listen to them and work with them. And a lot of these things are just how to do it fast and get it quick, and where's the easy button. So I guess from a brokerage standpoint, you have to think about, if you're willing to invest the time and go through this, there's a lot of options that can happen regardless of the market cycle you're in, whether it's going up or down or neutral. So I don't know, that's a long-winded foray on that, but just my thoughts about this first one.
No, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Richard. It's the counseling is the important part of it. And I also think, being able to work with other brokers that have also taken the time to counsel their clients or are educated, so you can have this dialogue. Because if you have a party on the other side that isn't aware of, it might really complicate things. So I think right on. Any questions with this one before I go on to the next one?
For some reason, I didn't get the link to buy the book, or too many things happened between the first communication. But was this book offered as a purchase before we joined this group?
So what I did is, after the first initial response, I said, hey, this is the book that we're going to go buy. Robert sells the front cover of his book to people. I guess if they want to market for their own purposes. There are quite a bit of these books available on the market. However, there are also some pricier options. I think you get it used. I think I probably paid like $50 for mine. So I would just make note of that. Get it on Amazon. But for these first few sections, I'll scan them so you can actually see if it's something that you're interested in, and then you could take it from there. So maybe by the third or fourth class, maybe start thinking about purchasing one. But it's just the front cover of the book is what I sent in the email. That's what it looks like. But sometimes you'll see somebody's picture on there, and you wonder, oh, is that the same book? And it is.
Yeah, okay. I saw the book for as much as $220, I think, on Amazon or some other sites. So it can get very expensive. I guess it's out of print at this point. And you're not going to be able to fully absorb 300 different strategies and put them into practice, like picking something off a shelf at the store and going with that. But I think it starts your mind working around different ways of looking or structuring things. And even if you just gain a couple of different things, you'll be armed better than 99.9% of other brokers out there.
Absolutely.
In terms of doing these.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I've gone through these a few times, and I still you get tripped up. So I'm glad that we're all here to talk about it. But yeah, so Robin, the book is available. I would look around for it because you'll find it probably in the $50 price range. And I will make a few copies, the pages, as we get started, just so you can see if it's something that you want to look at.
So the author allows people to buy it, put their own cover on it and market it as their own?
Yes, yeah. He's very very entrepreneurial. Like I said, we'll probably get him on here at one point. He's well into his 90s and he's really into cryptocurrency and yeah, he's a really interesting guy.
It sounds like it. I can't wait to hear from him.
Yeah, the
in
sooner
fact,
the better.
yeah, the video
Yeah.
that I sent in there, the video that I sent in the announcement for the class, he's actually speaking in there. So if you go back to it, you'll hear him in there.
Wonderful. I definitely want to get the book.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff on counseling. There's a lot of good things in here. I think you'll find it worth. Richard Reno, there's another book that I just got of Richard Reno. A lot of these books, this one was last printed in 2010. Richard Reno, he had books that were printed in the 50s, and they're very hard to come by to get those books. But I constantly just look and see when some of these books from these old timers are available. Let's go on to the next one, the creation of wealth. It says here, probably the most highly recognized formula. It was originated by Richard Reno. So he gives us a situation here that he has a guy named Val. Even the names are sort of funny that he uses. Has a property that's valued at $1 million. He has a loan on that property for $300,000, and then he has about $700,000 of equity. There's another guy he's been talking to named Baker. Baker has a property with $800,000 property. That's the current market value, I suppose. Has a loan on it for 200, and he has an equity in that of 600,000. What it's not saying is potentially Baker is wanting to get rid of the property. Maybe he's tired of managing it, but he's open to getting rid of it, and it looks like Abel is open to taking that property. So the way that I drew this one out, and if you could see my screen, you see that okay?
We're just seeing oh wait, sorry, I'm not on the right page, maybe, am I?
It might not have switched it over.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So this is the way that I had drawn it out. So Abel had this property again valued $100,000, $300,000 of debt, $700,000 of equity, and then Baker again had a property that was valued at $800,000, $200,000 of debt, $600,000 of equity. We know that the equity is like cash in the bank, and it just sort of sits there until we do something with it. And probably the most thing that we're familiar with is we borrow out through a refinance or maybe take a second mortgage. And so he's saying, let me tap into that equity that you have, Baker, and let me do it in a way that I guess reduces your risk a little bit, but also in a way that maybe I can put little money down or no money down. So Abel talks to Baker and he says, will you give me a $400,000 note on my property? And so he has $700,000 of equity. He gets a note for $400,000 on his property, and he gets another note for $200,000 on the other property. In essence, he was able to give Baker a way to wake up or use his equity through a loan. So now Baker is getting maybe a monthly or an annual payment for the loan that he's given out. And so the equity positions change now the property. So Abel ends up with 2 properties and Baker ends up with 2 notes. This one's a really interesting one. Any thoughts on this one?
No, I think while it's fairly straightforward, we don't see this, so, some of us, you don't wrap your head around, all the benefits of this, I guess, but, I think, like the book and, all the thought processes, you really have to know where the people are coming from. And in our business, we're so focused on the property that we don't think about the motivating factors that would allow people to both be motivated to do something like this or encouraged to. And there's also tax consequences too, that while the exchange hopefully defers tax for the future, the payments from the loan could have some principal payments that would be installment sale aspect too. So there's a lot of things going on here. Of course, when these guys started, they all did it with paper and pen, but we have Excel and other formulas to kind of help structure this a lot quicker and see how it might play out. But yeah, it's interesting to start getting your mind thinking more creatively, but initially you may be kind of overwhelmed by trying to think through all that.
Yeah, it took me a while. And the other way, sometimes you think, well, Baker could have did it for a seller carry on his property for the 600,000, and Abel could have taken it. But I guess the only weakness to that is Baker doesn't have the benefit of having notes against two different properties in the case that Abel defaulted. But it
So
also,
explain this strategy again one more time,
so
the dynamics.
yeah, so the I guess the gist of it is coming up with a way that Baker could activate the use of his equity in his property, and two, to give Baker a way to acquire a property without having to put any money down. And
So he is essentially he receives a loan from Abel for a portion of his equity.
actually, Baker gives Abel a loan. So Abel says, "Hey, Baker, I have this great property. I have a lot of equity tied up in it. I have $700,000 of equity tied up in my property. If you would give me a loan, that basically gives you an entitlement to my property. If you give me a loan for $400,000 on my property, and if you give me a loan for another $200,000 on your property, I'm going to give you a way that you can activate the use of your equity. You had $600,000 of equity, so I'm going to give you a way to use that and potentially get a bigger return than what you're making now. Maybe I'm able to manage the property better, get some new tenants in, and whatever we negotiated on our notes, maybe I can do better than what you're doing." I mean, these are making stuff up now, but that was sort of the gist. And Richard, if there's something that you feel free to jump in if there's some way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around all the whys and wherefores, but to me, Baker would have to be more motivated than Abel to take the two loans. Even though they're spread on two properties, he's still trusting that Abel is going to repay him. So if Abel gets into a hardship, his company goes bankrupt, if he got some business, then he may stop paying on either one of those loans or both. So it concentrates, he still has risk associated with it, but he would probably then have to do foreclosure. But since they're in probably a second position, he may have to cover the debt on the first at the same time. So you have to think through the consequences. And I don't see this strategy being quite as useful in today's market. There's so much liquidity out there with lenders and things that unless Baker was at the point where he couldn't sell this property very easily on the open market, and maybe he's kind of retiring and the note payments were a little more attractive, where it kind of gives him payments and things, but anyway, that's maybe a quick analysis from my perspective.
And one thing that it says somewhere in this book or somewhere I read with the exchanging is, for an exchange to happen in this way, you have to have a taker. So as Richard said, Baker might be the one that's initially maybe more motivated to say, I want to get rid of this. I want to do something different. Does that give some clarity, Robin? One of those things you have to
Yeah,
really go
it
through.
does. It's just one of those where you have to play with it with each
Yeah.
scenario for it to start to really gel. But yes, I've done several exchanges and each one of them is slightly different. But anyway, yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
And hopefully, with this, you build up a network of people and you have somebody you could be thought partners on some things. Let's go to the next one. Do it for that time. This one wasn't really anything different besides taking a note out on land that you had. So he calls it the creation of wealth number 2. Get the other side of the exchange to be your banker, which will allow you to free up to be part of your equity during your holding period. So the situation, you're in a market in which land is not selling, the parcel you are concerned with is well situated and will at some time in the future become prime development parcel. You peg the value to be at 1.5. You have various options to free this equity, one of course being an exchange, or you can use an exchange and buy back. But being a little concerned about some tax problems, you want to consider using the creation of wealth formula. So the solution he offers here is offer to create $100,000 or $1 million note, deed of trust, basically a loan secured by this property, and use it in exchanging into something acceptable to you. So he says, remember, you're offering to create the note, so you want to set the terms that are best for you. Don't be bashful. You have set these at a 2% interest only for more than 10 years. I mean, his numbers are probably a little bit far off, but I do think the one thing that he says, if you're getting in your own deals yourself, don't be bashful in trying to negotiate something really good for yourself. Real estate brokers have the habit of thinking this rate is too low, but it represents approximately, in this example, what you'd pay in the current market for CDs. So there wasn't too much to this one. It just seems like a straight note to me. So anything to share on this one?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. I did one of these a few years ago, a seller finance, and where it couldn't be sold for a period of 7 years, and it was interest only with a balloon at the end. And my seller, who became the lender, did not want it to be paid off, of course, because that's why he did it. He wanted the monthly income. But a couple of different owners, because it got sold a couple times, were trying to pay it off the loan, so that would trigger his capital gains. So what we've done is we incorporated the payoff to include whatever capital gains were going to affect my seller. And so that can work in some situations, and other situations it's just way too much. So we ended up waiting past the 7 years, so they were able to pay it off without the penalties. But still, because we were able to get a better return where we reinvested the money, it made up for what he was going to have to pay in the capital gains. So that's why I'm interested in this class and this book, because nowadays there are so many different ideas that get thrown at me by people trying to buy one of my listings that so anyway, this hopefully will be pretty helpful.
Yeah, and I think that was a great example. Curious, how did you market this opportunity that he was going to do this seller. He wanted to do seller finance. It was just in the local MLS or CoStar.
Yeah, I was on the MLS, CoStar, LoopNet, and everywhere else that I marketed it. And so it was back where he didn't need to do that, but that's what he wanted to do. And nowadays, or in this current market, seller financing, of course, is, depending on the terms, is a real viable choice now, even for the sellers, especially for the sellers now.
Yeah, and wanted to get out of it. And yeah, he said he was able to activate his equity and take advantage of it in other investments.
Yes, he was getting 4.5 interest only, and now he's getting close to 7.
Okay.
So it made up for the $200,000 he was going to have to pay in capital gains.
And you mentioned that, so if you did this again and that you had a closing, would you have then included language in a note that would have had that capital gains would have to be paid by the buyer if they wanted to close sooner? Is that what you were?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I learned something good there. That was like that. Richard, you had something?
No, that was a pretty interesting example that Robin gave, so I don't want to interfere with that. I think it's in the marketing of property in today's market, these tools like CoStar, LoopNet, Crexian, Reonomy, and all those kind of guide you towards the price solution, price and financing, and it doesn't really lend itself to creative real estate like this book and these strategies are kind of leading you towards. Now there's exchange groups, like you mentioned at the forefront. There's Society of Exchange Counselors that have quarterly meetings, and they're really interesting to see. A lot of these people are old timers, so I don't know how these strategies will kind of survive into the future. But in any event, this kind of gets you thinking about the value of debt, not just cash for a transaction. So a lot of people aren't quite as keyed into that, but as we go into higher interest rate markets, that seller financing allows the seller to perhaps get the price that they want. And of course, that's more common even in residential. You hear people like Pace Morby or whatnot talking about giving the seller his price as long as he gets his term. So both sides feel like they won in a manner of speaking. But there's new strategies too now that allow you on the tax side to think about even different ways, like opportunity zones, as long as those are still actively available to put money into. That kind of lengthens out your time of holding it. But there's other things with DSTs and whatnot too. So it's almost like we all need a spreadsheet to kind of check different boxes on what the motivation is or what the opportunities are, and kind of plug in, well, these strategies, these 4 strategies may be the best ones. I don't know that there's a tool like that, but for these things to really survive, it needs to be taken from the out of print book status into something more dynamic that's digital that you can plug into. I'm creating a business opportunity here for somebody to create an app, but it probably won't be me, but anyway, that's the way the world's working now. It has to be digitized.
I just, this is just since you mentioned sort of a tool to prioritize, I won't share too much on it, but a guy in our area teaches a class on counseling, and this is was created probably by Richard Reno in the Motley Crew at the time. But they basically came up with this structure to sort of analyze the different options that you can do and sort of prioritize them based on what the client is interested in. And maybe Ted Blank will join us, and maybe we could have him share just a snippet on the value of perception on one of our sessions. So the person who teaches this will have him here as well. I do notice that Larry and Ross joined. Would you guys like to just introduce yourself and say hello? Where are you from? Maybe what market or what real estate you focus on? And
Hi guys, this is Larry. Sorry, I jumped on late. Had to finish a call with a client. Yes. So basically, I'm from San Jose, California, Silicon Valley. I started in commercial, doing multifamily, and then the industrial space. I added a residential space in my career in 2012 and been practicing since.
all right, thank you.
Hi, you're welcome.
Welcome.
And I'm Ross Fellenstein. Good to see you doing this, Ramon. I think it's really cool. I guess I got the wrong cheat sheet. I looked at your first email, which you're not covering right now, but these are interesting too. But
Yes.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I'll say it afterwards.
Just so you know, I work with primarily investment properties, and I office in Golden, but I work all over Colorado and even out of state. So I've worked with Exchange. I'm a part of the Mile High Exchangers that Ramon goes to. And I love that you're doing this. I think this is really cool. I think this, looking at how you're going about this and kind of drilling into it on a book study type of approach, I think is something they ought to do at Mile High. I think it's a wonderful idea. Good job.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. And I was going to say, so we did this maybe a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. Larry was on the call, so thank you for joining again, Larry. And last night I made a game time decision. We were going to go through strategies starting with 25, because we finished the first 25 strategies last time. I thought, well, there's a whole bunch of new people, so let's just start over again. So for you, Larry, some of the stuff will be review again, but
Yeah,
if we can keep a good solid group together, we'll just continue on. So,
looks good.
all right. Okay, well, let's look at the third one. So you say something?
Well, I was going to say, has anybody else on the call attained this book? I've never bought it. I've thumbed through it. I think it's kind of cool. I'm cheating by being able to look through it, and I never have purchased it. I've looked at some other exchanger options, but call or just you, Ramon?
I think Wendy might have it. Wendy's the one that introduced me to it. I think she had a copy from Mark Lefkowitz for a while, and then I ended up using it and reading it, and I was like just really impressed with it and decided to buy it. I have shared with everybody that is on the call that there's some more people that are also interested in joining, so maybe the future sessions they'll join. But I'm not sure if anybody's purchased it yet.
I will say the other PDF study that you had some Zeckendorf in it, and which is really cool. That gets into some fun stuff. You might have Joe Dunn on that call. You might just needle him to be sure and be on that particular call. And then you'll have to stop him a little bit because he'll talk a long time and you need to redirect him occasionally. But he's read a book by Zeckendorf and really studied up on the guy. It's really fun to hear him talk about it for a while. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so what Russ is talking about is in the 25th strategies. There's some other of these exchangers, that are formulas that are included in there. So we'll certainly get to those. Ted Blank and Ted Strawn regularly join us. So hopefully, we can all have some firsthand experience with some of this stuff. Right, let's jump into the next one, the creation of wealth. This one was an interesting one. The situation was, in this one, we're working with a broker who had a large tomato farmer as a client. We had a building in another state that my client wanted out of with a price tag of $2 million. There was no cash in the market. The tomato farmer was interested in acquiring some of the property for appreciation, but also as a tax shelter. And a visual of what that one looks like is, can you see this screen here?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it just basically had the tomatoes, had the building. The interesting thing here was that because the tomatoes were a commodity, the value of tomatoes would change annually, but they nonetheless agreed that the building owner would get $400,000 worth of tomatoes. I suppose sometimes that would be more or less tomatoes. And that's how they negotiated the deal. So I think this one, there could be other things that could be traded in just a formal exchange, but I can't think of any other commodities. Can anybody else think of anything else besides tomatoes that? And the building guy, what is he going to do with that many tomatoes?
No, but I do have a question.
Mhm.
I get opportunities to once in a while to sell businesses along with the real estate. And it's a separate expertise that I usually farm out as far as the business part of it goes. But I think it would be helpful to be able to do them both together. Does anyone have any ideas or experience in that?
Could you say your question again, Robin? I'm sorry. I know that you've been worked with some business combined with real estate and you farmed out the business. What was your question? I'm sorry. I just went. Go ahead.
Do most of you not farm out the business portion of it and do both of those together?
I have done both together, and I try and surround myself with some expertise that helps, but a lot of times it's so involved. The business part of it is such primary to the deal that you're doing the right thing, bringing in expertise. Sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes it's ancillary, to the real estate. And in those cases, it's funny, you'll get business brokers that you got to really counsel them coming in. I'm sure you found this. You don't want to use their low multipliers when you have something that could evolve into a cap rate or be looked at that way, to the benefit of your seller. But yeah, I guess it depends how involved that business is. It sounds like if you're involved, if it's a, true business like a liquor store, which is more than half the value, or a restaurant, you're absolutely doing the right thing by bringing in somebody really good with that.
What
Does that
about a
answer your question?
residential care facility?
A what?
Residential care facility? Because the value of the real estate is one thing and the value of the actual business income is another. Have you
Yeah,
done any of those?
I actually happen to know somebody that started up a bunch of those. He's got like 7 or 8 of them himself. So I would have a phone call into him, but it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I saw one where it was great for that type of facility, but it had been one in the past. The ongoing business wasn't real strong right now. So I used him to evaluate more, what the validity was for doing that again at that location. If I think if it had been really in place, I'd look at it. I might be tempted, and there again, I might bring somebody in like you have too, if that's again more than half the value of the property. If that business is, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
If it's something that's romance in the future, I think you can handle that. Bring in people to say how high that potentiality is for the property.
No, Robin. Well, this is Larry. I just sold we call it a daycare facility with the real estate, and it really, the first thing is you want to check with your broker and your, what that coverage, does it cover business, right? And then if it does, what is the amount coverage is for? So you at least have a layer of protection. If you don't have it, then yes, for sure, you definitely want to get the expert on a third party, right? Second thing is you want to kind of hear out their situation. They kept their books good. Everything's pretty straightforward. Then, there's different options of experts that you could hire. One is you definitely bring a business a broker in that's experienced, well-versed into this, and they could help with the guidance, and you could partner with them. Second thing, if they don't partner, you could also do an appraisal, get a commercial appraiser out and help you with the evaluation. That would cost anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 typically. At least everywhere, every location may be different, but just what I'm hearing. And at the same time, and then if it's everything's pretty straightforward with the analysis, then if you could find out what the comparison of other, if you have enough comps, then you could kind of get an idea what the past sold for and what other similar facilities sold for, and it help you evaluate that as well. So we sold the campus. At first it was with the students, and then later on they decided to just do real estate only, and we were able to get top premium dollars for the real estate. I'm in the process of working on another different location, different care provider, daycare provider, and doing this similar experience going to what you're asking right now. We're evaluating the business and we're evaluating the real estate. So
Great. I may reach out to you in the future.
okay.
Thank you, you guys.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in, I know we're probably coming to a close here pretty quick. This is Richard, but Larry and Ross have given some excellent ideas. I think that's kind of in the transaction process when you're talking about bringing in other people. At some point, you have to get the listing or engage the seller, and they've got to feel confident in your ability to maximize their benefits. So you would be prepared to bring in those outside people. It may be a business broker, it may be an attorney that's versed in business transactions. But to bring it back to this exchange concept, I think go back to Raymond's first chart of the benefits. And so you'd kind of break it down where the real estate benefits certainly could have some aspect, even though the owner of the business owns the real estate, you might look at it, what's the market rent in that area for this type of property? But also what is the business doing now, and what maybe why is it doing that? Is it kind of being maximized or not? Things like daycare and restaurants were pretty heavily impacted during COVID, so their books aren't going to look all that great to somebody coming in, and you may want to combine the real estate and keep it together. Now, if they're a franchise restaurant or a franchised daycare type of that facility, that has a lot of value because there's a system process that people value and respect and can point to other transactions around the country that have sold under that franchise system. Or if it's a multi-chain operator, McDonald's probably was more of a real estate model than a hamburger model. And so I see a lot of operators that, they'll buy the land, build the restaurant, do a long-term lease, and then sell the leased restaurant and continue to operate the location. So long burst statement here is to kind of be able to evaluate both sides. And there's tax aspects that are unique to both the real estate or to the business. And there's things that benefit the business. There had the employment retention credit and other things that there's business credits that might be garnered for the seller before they sell, or there may be financing that's unique if the seller sold their business with a carryback on either the business or on the real estate. So it gets to be a real interesting, creative discussion if you can engage the seller in that, and you kind of pique their interest when you can think that way rather than just say, I know what the real estate's worth and we can bring in somebody else to do the business, which you certainly could, but I think you want to kind of be thinking in terms of that benefits analysis that really could open the ideas of the seller and get them focused on you representing them.
Yeah, properly.
Absolutely. That's great. Great information.
You guys gonna be at the Anaheim event, the family reunion?
I'm
I'm
not.
still on the fence. Yeah, I
Okay.
might make it out.
Okay, I'll be there. Just wondering who's gonna be there. Just to sync up.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. This is it came out amazing. I really appreciate the dialogue, and it makes it more beneficial if we're all sharing and asking questions. So thank you for all participating. I did record this. If you're all okay, I was going to share it with the people that didn't attend, just some value that they can get from joining us. And feel free, if you have colleagues that you'd like to join, let me know and I can add them to the meeting invite. And I'll send out the the next strategies prior to the meeting, so you can. I'll send them out sooner rather than later, that we can have them and review through them.
Great, thank
Okay.
you so much.
Yep. Thank you all
Yes,
for joining.
thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Good meeting you guys. Next, see you next
Nice
time.
to meet you as well.
Good to meet you as well. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.